Welcome in the Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on yet another NFL Sunday. Of course, tonight, the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday Night Football in LA. Steelers trying to improve to 6-3 on the season. Of course, we'll be live tonight. Me and Ponzi will be in studio for an hour-long pregame show to get you guys ready for tonight's matchup. Then we'll have live play-by-play and analysis of the game itself, followed by extensive post-game coverage. And we go live for every single Steelers game this year. Today, I'm going to be breaking down some of the top storylines that you guys should be keeping your eye on throughout the National Football League. And then, of course, for tonight's game between the Steelers and Chargers. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. With that, let's jump right into some of these storylines here that I'm going to be watching out for today on NFL Sunday, as well as Sunday Night Football in this matchup between the Steelers and Chargers. And we'll start outside of this Sunday Night Football matchup, but stay within the AFC North as the Baltimore Ravens, currently 3-5, going up against the Minnesota Vikings today in the early slate of games, and that's a big one in the AFC North, in my opinion, because if the Steelers have an opportunity to go up 3 games in the division today, that would be just absolutely incredible. And of course, the Ravens sitting at 3-5, if they lose to Minnesota today, and hey man, the Vikings, especially in their building, US Bank Stadium, it gets loud in that stadium, and that's a tough place to play. If they can take down the Ravens today, that means Baltimore falls to 3-6 on the season. And that gives the Steelers an opportunity to go up a whopping 3 games in the division, with just 7 games left to go. If they can win versus the Los Angeles Chargers tonight. Now, obviously, the Ravens, as it stands right now, are just 2 games behind the Steelers. So if they beat the Vikings and let's say the Steelers lose, that means with 7 games to go, it's just a 1-game advantage that the Steelers have within the division. And obviously, things would feel like the Ravens are certainly coming. But, it could go in 2 different ways today for sure. In fact, it can go 3 different ways. It could stay at 2 games for the Steelers. That can happen either if the Ravens and Steelers both lose or if the Ravens and Steelers both win. But there's also, the best case scenario today where the Ravens could lose and the Steelers win. And in that case, man, that really sets the Steelers up really, really nicely to secure this division championship by the end of the season. Because a 3-game advantage with just 7 games left to go, that is a pretty big advantage. And barring the Ravens having a stellar final stretch of their season, sweeping the Steelers, the Steelers having a terrible stretch to finish their season and getting swept by the Ravens, the Steelers would be in a really good position to win the AFC North if that happens. So definitely in the early slate of games today, keep your eye on the Baltimore Ravens and the Minnesota Vikings, because that's a really big game. Surely the Ravens defense has been playing better their last 2 games, and of course now they have Lamar Jackson back, so I would probably expect the Ravens to win that game. I would pick the Ravens to win, but like I said, man, going into Minnesota in US Bank Stadium, really tough place to play. That team just took down a really good Lions team on the road last week. That defense played incredibly, so I'm going to be watching that game extremely closely today. And if the Ravens lose today, that means that the Steelers will have one hell of an opportunity to, kind of take this division by the horns and, really set themselves up for a division championship here in Week 10. But now let's shift our focus here to the game itself for tonight, Steelers versus Chargers. Of course, you're coming off a big win versus the Indianapolis Colts, in which your defense had its best day of the season by far, at least in my opinion, maybe outside of the Patriots game where you secured 5 turnovers. But last week, once again, the defense gets 5, special teams gets another turnover for a total of 6 turnovers. And before garbage time, the defense was giving up less than 4 yards per play, which is really, really good. So I'm looking at tonight's game, and I'm wondering, can they repeat it? Now, was it more on Indianapolis not being able to get things going, or was it more on the Steelers finding something that's going to work? And then, another question is, will Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin actually stick to what works? Some of their comments this week suggest that maybe they won't have, kind of the same game plan that really worked against the Indianapolis Colts. But I really think the best way for this team to play is to be, a non-blitzing team, put bodies out in coverage, play with 2 high safeties, and allow the run defense talents of Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar to show out in those two high safety looks. And I really think that gives us the Steelers a big advantage, and it kind of covers up some of the holes that they have in pass coverage. Darius Slay certainly hasn't been great in pass coverage this year. Joey Porter Jr. can get called for holdings at times, even though he's pretty sticky in coverage. He will get penalized. And guys like Patrick Queen have just been awful in pass coverage this year, specifically zone coverage. So, there's certainly, and then also Kyle Duggar, before he came to the Pittsburgh Steelers, had some lapses in coverage throughout the season. So I'm looking at this Steelers defense, and obviously the strength of this group is when the pass rush can get home, can create chaos, can create turnovers, and force mistakes out of opposing quarterbacks, just like they did versus Daniel Jones last week. This week it'll be a different challenge with a guy like Justin Herbert, and we've seen some really high-end quarterbacks kind of carve up the Steelers' a defense this year in the passing game, and Justin Herbert, I would say, is certainly one of those guys. He's a bona fide star quarterback, and he's got some legitimate receiving weapons. Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, of course, Oronde Gadsden, their rookie tight end, who has had a phenomenal rookie season. I'm looking at this matchup today, and I'm really excited to see what the Steelers defense is going to be able to do, because at least on paper, they should be able to handle this Chargers team. They should be able to handle this, especially this offensive line. This is a Chargers team that has really struggled when they've missed both Rashawn Slater, who's been out this entire season, and Joe Alt, who is out for the rest of the season as well now. And, the two tackles that the Chargers are going to be running out there are Austin Deculus and Trey Pipkins. And those guys should be, mincemeat for guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. We saw Watt and Highsmith really affect the game last week against two really good tackles. I mean, Bernard Raymond, Braden Smith, the two tackles for the Colts, really good players, and the Steelers really won that matchup all day long. There's no reason why they shouldn't at least, have a similar type of performance, if not even better, tonight, and really put the pressure on Justin Herbert and do it quickly. So really excited to see if this Steelers defense can show up yet again and in front of a national audience. The last time, the NFL world saw this defense, they were getting absolutely shredded in the second half versus the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. So hopefully tonight, this defense can step up, put together 4 good quarters, and help lead this team to victory. But then on the other side of the ball, there's definitely something to keep your eye on for the Steelers offense tonight, and that is the fact that Isaac Seumalo, the starting left guard for this team, is out this week with a pectoral injury, which means Spencer Anderson, who is usually your jumbo tight end, is going to be playing left guard. And, my big question as to how that dynamic is going to work is how does it affect the run game? Because we saw in the first 3 weeks of the Steelers schedule, they didn't really play jumbo personnel packages. And they were honestly one of the worst run games in the league. And what that led to was defenses playing a lot of too high safety coverages and taking away the downfield passing game for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense. And the Steelers offense really depended a lot on play action passing and underneath passing, quick throws out into the flat, just because there's nothing open downfield for Aaron Rodgers. So certainly, taking Isaac Seumalo out and having to put Spencer Anderson at left guard creates some questions. Not only is Anderson a straight-up downgrade from Seumalo at left guard, he gave up multiple pressures against the Colts last week when Seumalo had to leave the game, but also, can you really operate your jumbo personnel packages? It's going to be interesting to see if they do turn to those jumbo looks, who's going to be out there. Will it be Ryan McCollum, the backup center? Will it be Andrus Peat, a backup offensive lineman? And then if they do go to those guys, how effective will it be? Because I really think tonight, guys, the run game for the Steelers is going to be key, because Jesse Minter and that Chargers defense loves to sit in nickel, loves to sit in too high safety coverages, and loves to, try and force teams to beat them on the ground. And if the Steelers can't move the line of scrimmage without their jumbo personnel packages out there, similar to how they weren't able to get any push in the first 3 weeks of the season, then, obviously that's going to force the Steelers offense to be very dependent on Aaron Rodgers and the quick passing game, and the play action passing game, all that stuff. And I don't know if I want to go back to that world. I really much preferred I really much prefer the way that this offense has looked since week 4 as opposed to those first 3 weeks where there's been more downfield passing. Aaron Rodgers has had more freedom to throw the ball down the field to his receivers, and I guess we'll just have to see how things play out, what Arthur Smith's game plan is with Isaac Seumalo out of the lineup. So that's certainly something to keep your eye on tonight. I know I certainly will. And the final thing that I want to talk about here before I say goodbye until our watch party tonight, guys, at 7, is that if the Steelers win tonight, man, like, you have to look at the Steelers as a team that is certainly capable of beating playoff caliber teams, at least at this point in the season, because if they win tonight, that means during this 3-game stretch where they have played the Packers, they have played the Colts, and they have played the Chargers, if they win tonight, that means they go 2 for 3 in those 3 games. And, you know, in this stretch where you're facing playoff caliber teams, you win a majority of those games. And then when you take on the fact that you played Seattle, played New England earlier on in the season, that means you'd be going to 3-2 on the year against playoff caliber teams. So, you know, that would certainly indicate that this Steelers team is capable of beating playoff caliber teams this year, especially if they win this game pretty handily. And by the way, I have predicted a 27-17 victory for the Steelers tonight. I think with the pass rush that the Steelers are going to have, I think that the run game will be good enough, and I think the pass game will be good enough to get to 27 points tonight. I think there will be some turnovers. I think that the Steelers will play a good brand of football here this evening, and I think they'll make a statement. And if that happens, man, like, you're sitting at, you know, a pretty decent spot, 6-3. Like we talked about, if the Ravens lose today, that's even better. And you're above 500 when playing playoff quality teams heading into next week at home in a revenge game here against the Cincinnati Bengals, where I'm hoping they have a better game plan against Jamar Chase than what they had a couple weeks back on Thursday Night Football. But, you know, certainly tonight feels like a pivotal night for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not just because of the dynamic in the AFC North that we talked about earlier, but also because of the narrative surrounding what kind of teams the Steelers can beat. Because if they lose tonight, you know, you're looking at losses, you know, you're sitting at 2-3 against playoff caliber teams, right? And, you know, the 2 times that you won was because you had to depend on a lot of turnovers, all that different stuff. If you lose tonight against a Charger team that has really struggled without Joe Alt this season, you know, especially because it's going to be almost like a pseudo home game for the Steelers. The reports on the ground in LA is that, you know, the crowd at SoFi tonight is going to be very heavy Steelers. If you lose this game, man, like that really feels like a big step backwards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, you know, I really think because of that, tonight feels like a pivotal night for the Pittsburgh Steelers 2025 season. Obviously, you know, with the games meaning in the regular season as much as they do in the National Football League, especially in the middle of the season, you know, obviously it feels like every single game at this point is a pivotal game for the Steelers. But, you know, especially this week, Sunday Night Football in front of a national audience against a 6-3 football team in the Los Angeles Chargers. If you can go out in there, get a win, get to 6-3, I think the narrative surrounding this Steelers team is going to change quite drastically, and it's going to set this Steelers team up certainly to get into the playoffs once again this year. But if you lose, you go to 5-4, and, you know, some of these games coming up against Cincinnati, against Chicago, against Buffalo become really, really important for you know, the destiny that this team is kind of on their way towards. So really do appreciate all of your guys' support watching today's video. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And again, a reminder, we'll be going live on this channel. We're expecting about 200,000 people to watch tonight's show on the Steelers Talk Watch Party. Again, we're going to have over an hour of pregame coverage. We're going to have live play-by-play and analysis of the game itself, followed by extensive post-game coverage when the game is over. We're going to be doing super chat raffles. We're going to be doing all the great stuff that we usually do on the channel. So again, guys, don't be late, 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Can't wait to see you guys there. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.